Please welcome Jane Birkin. Hi.
Hello.
Let's begin by talking about how your collaboration with Agnès Varda began. I understand during this period she almost became a kind of family member, and you made 2 films together. But had the idea always been to make a portrait film such as this?
The idea hadn't really been to make a film at all. I'd written a letter to her because I'd loved the film with Sandrine Bonnaire, and I've never really written to anybody in my life before, but I thought, I hope she passes it on to Sandrine, because I wasn't quite sure what was Varda, what was Sandrine. And she rang me up to say that I'd got very bad handwriting, and that she couldn't understand a word, and she would like me to have a rendezvous with her, and it would be nice if it would be in a park outside Paris. I said, I didn't really like walking very much, and I wasn't very keen on parks. But as Agnès always gets her way, I was in the park, and she said she wanted to make a film about seasons. And I thought that might be very weird, because what did she want to do with sort of autumn leaves and things like that? And she said, no, I just want to follow you. And so I was sort of agreeably surprised, because I was going to do a concert at the Bataclan, and I'd just about turned 40, and I thought, well, perhaps I'll be believable as being any old person, sort of on a bench. I could be any old person now. And so we started, and the idea was that she would write ideas down, and there were a few I really didn't want to do at all, but of course I did them, because that was part of the thing, was that to do them. So when I didn't want to do the thing about Spanish dancers, and Laurel and Hardy, I couldn't bear, and was quite miserable. And but I did get to play Joan of Arc, and it was very funny. I was on my horse in the Rue de Rivoli at a red light, and I was wearing this tickly armor, and my boots were sort of pointed the way they are in those days. And I must have tickled my horse, because he went off with me along if you know the Rue de Rivoli, way he went, and people, I heard them saying, and it was about quite a different actress, so I must have looked so petrified. They said that they thought it was, I can't remember what her name was. I've forgotten. But Agnès also had me burnt, and I really did want to do the last scene of Joan of Arc. And we were doing it in a place, you can't do it in Rouen anymore, so there's a place just outside Paris where they're burning Joan of Arcs all the time. So I went along, and he gave me a sort of goblet with a straw, and whilst I was waiting to walk up, and I remember taking myself so seriously, I was so overwhelmed by the scene, that I hadn't noticed that the little man who was tying me to the stick, he'd got a funny red hood with 2 little eye holes here. And because he had to run round me, the eye holes had gone round to the back. So I was being strangled. And so I very nearly passed away, because it took a long time for Agnès to realize that this was no acting whatsoever. And so I had some good fun. She had some good fun, but it's true that she was there in my house for nearly a year. So people who were not having their photo taken and were not having movies made about them got a bit cheesed off, like Charlotte, I think. I mean, I know. And of course I didn't mind, because it was all going to be about me, so. And also I was pleased because in fact, it's about Agnès. In the scene that you saw with the croupier, where she wanted me to play a casino person who says rien va plus. I said, I don't know how to do that. And she said, everyone knows how to do that. And I said, I don't. And I realized that in fact, her father had ruined them in a place for gambling in Knokkelzoot. So I started to realize that in fact, I was being Agnès. And that was a lot more fascinating for me. And you're very kind to have come in when it was sunny outside. I say that in passing. Agnès wanted to know, she wanted to send her love. And I'll be able to tell her that for Jane B, it's been a full house on a Sunday afternoon. She'll have to believe me.
Was the shooting of Kung Fu Master at the same time at all? Did it overlap, or was it afterward?
Well, whilst we were doing Jane B, I'd written a script because, a few pages of a script. And it was because my eldest daughter, Kate, was having a party in my house, and a dressing up party. And there was a boy, I don't know how old he was, but he came into my bathroom and he said, could he have some cleansing cream and some tissues to get the makeup off his face? And I said, of course, of course. And then I looked in the mirror and I thought, wouldn't it be strange if this boy who came for a party for my daughter, that I fell in love with him, in fact, or he fell in love with me. And I showed it to Agnès. And she said that she couldn't make it about him falling in love with me, but she could make it about me falling in love with him. So we started it off together, and I had to choose who the young boy would be. So she said, had his voice broken or not? So I said, oh gosh, no, he hasn't got a broken voice, because that would be scary. And so it was that she sent boys along whilst I was singing at the Bataclan to sort of say yes, yes, no, no. And I said, in fact, I want your son Mathieu. She said, in that case, I want your daughter Charlotte. So I said to Charlotte, if you say yes, you better not change your mind, because you can't with Agnès. And she said, no, no. She was pretty cheesed off, but she didn't want anybody else in her bedroom, which I do understand, because I wanted to put another little girl in her bed in that case if she didn't want to do it. And so I'm very pleased she is in it. And to have souvenirs of them all when they were small. Lou, too, was about 4. And Agnès brought in all of her magic about Kung Fu. I knew nothing about what little boys wanted to see. But she had Mathieu, so she knew. She knew what he saw. She didn't want him to say anything. She didn't want dialogue for him. For me, it was okay. But she didn't want to presume what he was thinking. She's very, very... She's very careful in that she doesn't want to presume that she knows what's going on in people's minds. So it was that we had, in fact, 2 films coming out together. Kung Fu Master, which was getting bigger and bigger, so it became the film that maybe you'll see this evening, and Jane B, which came out at the same time. So...
and at this point in your career, you'd already worked with an amazing, sort of insane assortment of directors, everyone from Antonio Margheriti and Paul Morrissey to Antonioni and Godard, and then you'd go on to work with Alain Resnais and Hong Sang-soo. So I'm just curious, the list is really eclectic in a fascinating way. What qualities in a director attract you to them, and who have been some of your favorites to work with?
I suppose when you're asked not only once, but twice, but 3 times, like Rivette, I was just so pleased that he thought of you straight off, and it was very, very. exciting to be on his third, and it was going to be his last film, therefore. And Jacques Doyon, it was 3 films too. And I mean, I like it when people ask a lot of you. If they ask you to, I don't know, be them. Very often with men directors, you're often playing them. I realized I was playing Jacques, and that was interesting because it was psychologically interesting. No one had ever asked me to defend male or female parts that have already been played out into some danger in their own life. So I realized with the Fille Prodigue, yes, I was being Jacques. I didn't have to worry about whether my father had loved me, because he did. And so it was Jacques' quandary. And that's very exciting to do. Very. And other ones have just been a laugh, you know. And many of the ones you actually said, I thought, oh my God, I thought they'd been buried a long time ago. I mean, it's, many of them are not worth looking at all. But the ones I was able to choose for this, of course, I chose the ones that were really good.
And there are many amazing actors who you play with in Jane B by Agnès V. It's people you've worked with, who I know you'd worked with before, like Philippe Léotard, and then people who I don't believe you'd worked with, like Leo. Could you talk about working with the actors in this film?
Leo was a bit frightening because he used to scream, an enormous scream, just before you do the take. So your hair stands on, and we were in the middle of the Bois de Boulogne, and suddenly he let out this terrible scream. Then I started to realize he was going to do that every time there was the clap thing, so I got sort of used to it. But, they've been quite eccentric. He was good fun. And, well, it was quite difficult to find men that actually wanted to come in on such a big project that Varda had. But I've been lucky, you know, I've had Piccoli many, many times. And Depardieu 3 times. The greatest actors are the easiest, actually, I found. And they had the very kind quality to try and make the thing wonderful for you. So they didn't mind that they were turning their back. They were holding you up. That's a very charming characteristic, and I was able to scoop a lot of them up for boxes when I made my film. So I've been lucky.
And before I turn it over to the audience, I'm curious about the paintings in the film and the how you and Agnès selected the paintings, and both the ones that you just show on screen and the ones that you in fact staged sort of tableau vivant reconstructions of. Were those mostly paintings that you favored, or?
Oh no, that was all Agnès. It was all Agnès, and I hadn't really realized that the one that I suppose it was Salvador Dali that took, of course, all afternoon and the following afternoon to shoot. It just must have been terribly expensive, apart from anything else. But the beauty of it was that Agnès knows all the paintings. She knew about the one I had to open the chest for, and she wanted you to be a sort of poor person, being the maid, and be the mistress. And we went off to Belgium to try and find an angel, because she knew all the religious paintings. In fact, that's what I was sending off to her this afternoon, because I knew that she'd know all the paintings in museums here. And she does. She's absolutely fascinating on that. So all that was Agnès.
So let's take some questions from the audience.
I brought her a dream. I'd had a most dreadful dream. I I think it's in the film. I had to go to a cafe, and I'd had the dream that night. And as I had just finished playing the Countess in La Fausse Suivante, which was a Marivaux play with Chéreau, I'd had a dream that I'd killed a girl in a well, and that she'd had time to write my name, so people would know that you were not sweet and kind-hearted, that you were a terrible person who's killed this girl. And I was all sweaty and went straight to see Agnès and told her about the dream. So maybe it was in the film, maybe not. She wanted me to put my basket upside down, my bag. I didn't really want to, but I realized that she was right when she said that, actually, just because you know all that, do you really know the person? Probably not. And what else did I bring her? Inspiration, I hope, for some things. I didn't like being the person on the island with all the blonde hair very much. Do you know? But she said, well, you were Serge's muse, so this is the muse. But I certainly found out a lot. I mean, I knew a lot more after the film than before, or worst. She was able to do really what she wanted. It was nearly going to be a film that wasn't even going to stop. We went off to Egypt. Took my parents to Egypt, and Agnès was there, and she said, perhaps we could do some more scenes of the film. I said, don't, because my father will think that I've done it on purpose. He was already very, very cross.
I'll repeat the question.
Did I stuff a cat? I do know how to stuff a cat, but it's because of Rivette. A pigeon's much easier. Birds are quite easy because you turn them inside out, and then when you turn them the right way around, they go poof, and everything looks all neat and nice. And you just stuff them with some cotton wool and stuff. I've done a few. The real art is you can stuff nearly everything, but do you make it look alive? Mine just looked like a dead pigeon, and it was pretty horrible to look like. It didn't go bad or anything, but... So, you say there was a cat. That's worrying.
You mentioned Mowgli the cat should be taken to the taxidermy.
Oh, Moggy. Yeah. That's an old... it's a North of England term of what you call sort of rough and scruffy cats. Yes, Moggy. I didn't. You think you're going to do things, and then when it comes... it's such a horrible shock, and you don't actually do it. But the taxidermist said to me, you must bring him immediately, and I'll do him in his sort of favorite gestures. And I thought, well, it was not a cat that did anything pretty like that. It was scratching behind his neck. And they said, bring it immediately. I said, it's not dead yet. And so perhaps that was in the film like that. I don't think that it was terribly interesting. I saw them, that they were passing on French television, and I listened to one of them with a horrible squeaky voice I had, and then I thought perhaps the first one was better. But it's not really.
But he was so incredible at the end of it.
No.
When yesterday came out
No.
so glamorous.
No, I can do that. But but no, I didn't think I was very good in them. Really not. I met very, very funny people. So my diary can be quite a hoot. I hope. I'm longing to get to that bit, because what happened off screen was far more interesting than the films. And with all those people, it was quite extraordinary. But no. I don't think that I was any good in them. Really not. I saw it the other day. No. No, never. So I didn't turn anything down. And I did a rather rough film with Morrissey, actually, when I think about it. I think it was called Beethoven's Nephew or something, To Be Avoided. Very, very bad, I think. It was on a weird idea that people were going to be able to become a producer. I mean, everybody, all of you could put in your well-earned cash into this film. I think everybody lost a great deal of money. It was a fearful venture.
Well, you also worked with Abraham Polonsky on Romance of a Horse Thief.
That was more exciting. It was more exciting, but he was the one who told Serge to make a film straight away, because he had to wait, 20 years because of the McCarthy system. So he just stopped making movies, and it broke him. It broke him. So it was lovely to do Romance of a Horse Thief, and Serge is marvelous in it because he's a sort of comic person who falls into the mud. And with Yul Brynner, it was all terribly romantic. Now that's worth seeing, I would think.
Is there anyone whom you didn't work with, whom you wish you had or you want to?
No, I wouldn't work. I don't think I should go on doing movies anymore. So it's not. I can't really. I certainly wouldn't ask somebody now. And in the old days, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know whether I was. I don't know whether I was that good. I mean, if I'd got my accent now, then perhaps I could have been quite funny. And my mother used to regret that I wasn't in sort of funny, sad films like Shirley MacLaine, she always thought. Good old Ma. She was really a darling, and she got Je t'aime moi non plus, or she got these dramatic parts, but she always thought that would have been that was something that was missed. I don't know.
And may I ask which actresses or just any actor did you admire when you were growing up?
Shirley MacLaine. Oh, darling Shirley MacLaine. Certainly. Audrey Hepburn. Oh, just so many. But perhaps those two girls are something really special.
We have time for a couple more questions. I'll repeat the question in case anyone couldn't hear. The question is whether Jane is going to perform in New York anytime soon.
I don't know. I did New York not long ago in the town hall. And it was a bit of a time ago, but it was in the town hall. I would love to come back. I think there's an idea of singing with the Philharmonic in Canada, and maybe a few other Serge's works, of course. Maybe that will come round to something. I don't know. I really don't know. Certainly. You weren't there the other night when I talked about him? Maybe not. I would tell you, then I'll tell you quickly that he was, I mean, when he came round to my house to ask me to do L'amour par terre, I got all sort of nervy and said, well, where's the script? And he said, I never worked with the script. So I said, well, in that case, you know, I had to have rules, otherwise I'd go mad. And he said, but it's in a circus. And I said, oh, I hate circuses and pigeons up people's sleeves, and it's all sort of sordid. And so he left. He left with Geraldine Chaplin, and Jacques Doyon was downstairs in the kitchen, and he said, so what happened? So I said, can you believe it? He doesn't have a script. And he said, have you ever seen any of his films? So I said, well, no. And he said, well, go off to the left wing, you know, to the, I think it was at Saint-Michel. They were always playing his films. And I went to see Céline et Julie vont en bateau. And I came out absolutely so thrilled by the film, by its magic, by its way of not being like anybody else. I thought if I could be up to the knees of one of those three actresses, it would just be divine. So I rushed home, And I rang up Geraldine Chaplin, and she said, I know, you don't like, if there's not a script and you don't like pigeons. And I said, no, I want to do it. Give me Rivette's number. So she rang him. And a happy beginning it was. Because indeed, he didn't give you any scripts, but it was to keep people, I don't know, it was his way. And it's true that you don't know what's going to happen next. And sometimes if you know you've got a dramatic end coming up, then you start looking wistful and I don't know, holding on to people. Whereas if you simply don't know, then boom. And so it was exciting every day to see what was in store for you. What had somebody else done? And after that film, he asked me to be in the film with Piccoli. And thereafter, I did a few weeks' work with him in the same way. And then he said, and I'd got all my children and other people's children. I got about 10 children in an enormous house I was sharing with Piccoli. And he said, now you must go back to Paris and then come back again in a week's time. So I went off back to Paris, and when I came back in a week's time, I couldn't think what Piccoli had been up to when I hadn't been there. So I was feeling very peculiar. Even the house that I'd got used to thinking that it was my house, I thought, what had he done with Emmanuel? What's been going on? And so he was even to there truthful. I didn't know what they'd been up to. I saw when the film came out. But it was exactly that sort of uneasiness that you have if you are afraid that he'll start painting somebody else and not you. And then on the third film, he asked me and came round to the flat, and this time I was so used to him, but at the same time I don't think that I ever had imagined he'd ask me for the third time. And it was once again a circus, and we went off to do it in the south of France. It was quite short because he was ill. He started to be ill, so he was always his sweet self, and he felt he was quite all right when he was actually directing scenes. Then he could tell you absolutely exactly what you were doing wrong. And I realized that I tried to be clever and learn one of the scenes because it was a long monologue in a cemetery. And he'd given it to me a couple of weeks earlier, so I knew it really off by heart. And I thought I'd done it really well. And then when I saw the film when it came out, or rather I think there was a private projection, I saw that it was the only scene that I thought that I hadn't done very well, because it was so well learnt off by heart that it had no pauses. And perhaps when we were pausing to try and think what the text was, because he'd given it to you, I don't know, sometimes 15 minutes before doing the scene, and it was sometimes quite complicated. Well, that sort of hesitation made it seem very, very real. So, there, dear Jacques Rivette.
Let's end it there. Thank you, Jane.